What's up, Facebook? We're back at it this morning, Thursday, with Criminal Justice Cafe. You know, we have Richard Speck with us out of Safe and Just, Michigan. You know, Richard always keeps his cup of coffee and keeps things live for us, keeps everyone balanced on this. So we really appreciate Richard's participation in here. He's my co-host, and we just love it. Today, we have an interesting guy on here, one of our buddies inside the tribe, a brother of the numbers, what we would call him, and just the amazing things that he's doing, a powerful story. Aaron, actually, I think it was about 2 years ago, Aaron came out here to Fresh Coast and was able to share with our group about his own story and his own journey from incarceration back into society and the things that he's doing. So we're really excited about being able to interview him and have him share what he's doing in his work with the Youth Justice Fund. So Aaron, why don't you take just a minute and introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do, and then Rick, you right after him, all right?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nate. It's good to be here with you and Rick. I think what you guys are doing on here is awesome, kind of drawing, some new perspectives from those of us that have been incarcerated in the system and are also kind of become successful after we've come home after a few years. So I'm a professor of criminology and criminal justice at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. I work on a lot of research with correctional populations, prisoner education, stuff like that. And I'm also, about 8 months now, I've become the executive director of the Youth Justice Fund. And this is a nonprofit that serves formerly incarcerated youth. A lot of these young people went into the system and were sentenced as adults in jail or prison. A big part of our population that we serve there are formerly incarcerated juvenile lifers. So the Miller v. Alabama case and the Montgomery v. Louisiana case that come down from the United States Supreme Court basically said that juveniles cannot mandatorily be given a life sentence. So a lot of these individuals, thousands of them nationwide, over 366 of them in the state of Michigan alone, are getting resentenced and they're coming home. So these are kids that went in 14, 15 years old. Now they're coming home like our age, in all honesty, 30s, 40s, 50 years old. And, there's a lot of issues that they face. In fact, I think some of the biggest problems, with reentry is coming from these populations because they've just been so disconnected from their communities. So I'm doing that now. I've done a lot of advocacy, public policy stuff, and I'm just about being passionate and helping people that have been through similar things as myself after spending about 10 years as a young man in the system.
That's awesome. Yeah, the work you're doing is just fabulous, and the work that you were doing prior to, it just I just love it. Rick?
Morning. Rick Speck, Safe and Just Michigan, Community Engagement Specialist. Also a brother of the numbers, formerly incarcerated, unfortunately served 3 prison terms. The last one spanning 15 years for allegedly impersonating a DEA agent and robbing a drug house, allegedly. I pled no contest, so that's why I stick with the allegedly. Been with Safe and Just since March 16, day before the state shut down, so been a heck of a ride here. Really enjoy the work at Safe and Just and what we're doing and the issues we're working on, and how we're trying to raise impacted voices like ours, so that, as Aaron said earlier, people get a new perspective on this work and what it means to restore. And so, yeah, I'm just humbled to be here. Happy to have Aaron on, have him tell us. I know he's on a little bit of a road trip, so I think my first question to you is going to be, you mentioned you're on a little bit of a road trip. What's that road trip for exactly?
Yeah, so I'm going up northern Michigan right now, Rick. I'm going to be peeping out some camping sites, and probably listeners are thinking, well, what the hell does that have to do with your job? So let me tell you. So like I mentioned, we work with a lot of formerly incarcerated youth. A big piece of that population are juvenile lifers that we serve. A lot of these individuals, men and women, they've been locked up so long since they were kids that they've never gone camping. They've never gone swimming. They've never seen the beautiful aspects of nature that we have throughout the state of Michigan. So something that happened last year through ICANN fellowship, Deb LaBelle had started a connection with the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth. They did this really incredible camping trip retreat with trauma-informed practices. And dozens of juvenile lifers were able to go to this and for the first time, dip their feet into the water and really build community and talk about some of the crazy stuff that they went through, not just in the prison system, but, as children too. So I want to try to recreate that. This year we're fundraising online on Facebook for the Trauma Summer Camp for the Youth Justice Fund. And I'm trying to take 10 to 20 of these formerly incarcerated youth up north and have them have a great time. This COVID-19 lockdown has destroyed a lot of us, the economy, our mental health, but it's been really particularly impactful on incarcerated populations that have come home. I don't think people really realize the devastation that that's had on us, not just economically, but from a mental standpoint too, myself included. I've been home 13 years, and this lockdown has got me really having flashbacks to what it's like to be controlled in prison. So for us to go up north and do some substance abuse work, different types of clinical work, working with PTSD, which is another thing people coming home from prison need to deal with, but then just having fun, rafting, kayaking, whatever we can come up with in some tents and barbecuing while practicing, social distancing and safe practices with masks when necessary. I think it's a great idea, and I'm excited to be a part of this. And we've done over $7,000 we've got towards our goal right now. So if you're online now and you're listening, go to my Facebook page, Aaron Kinzel. Just look up that summer trauma camp, or the Youth Justice Fund has it posted as well.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think that experiencing that, right, for the first time just got to be crazy. When I think back, I grew up camping, so it's something that I always enjoyed, right, getting out and getting one with nature. And so I think this is going to be just off the hook for folks, right? I know a lot of people are excited about it. I know we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. The donations are coming in. Let's keep them coming in. The more we raise, the better time, we can have for these folks, right?
Absolutely. And I'm excited for these people too, Rick, and all on it, because I've been camping a lot. Since I've come home, I've become very privileged and kind of living a lifestyle that I never had as a child. So for me to give that to others who are just coming home is really impactful for me too. Really hits the heart.
Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing about the doing this thing is having those focused groups, where you can go and you can really disengage, disattach from the normal streams of everyday life, and being able to have a focus group where you actually deal with some of the tough issues. Because, you look back, just take us three, being a representative of so many people, how much nonsense, the things that we've seen in prison and even prior to being in dysfunctional homes, right? And not realizing when we're in our crap, we don't realize how impactful that is and how much of it's impacted our emotional state, our mental, all of that. And then coming to the grips man, I got to walk back out of what I've walked into and process back out, and the whole healing that takes place in that. So that's so anyone listening, if you have the means to help out and be a part of the healing process with what they're doing here, my Fresh Coast people, if you're watching, this would be something worth investing into with what they're doing.
Yeah, we appreciate that for sure, Nate. And you're right. I think trauma is probably the most overlooked aspect of criminal justice reform that we have. Yeah. The impact of trauma and it's not just the prison experience, which is devastating to all of us, men and women that have been down, whether it's 5 years or 50 years. But it's the trauma before that. It's the early childhood trauma. A lot of us that got justice involved, our trauma didn't start at the door of the prison gates. Right. Our trauma started, years or decades before that. A lot of people don't really understand that. For myself included, I committed a violent crime. To be very honest, I got 19 years for starting a shootout with the police. That's pretty damn serious and very violent. But if you really look back at my childhood, and that doesn't excuse my behavior by any means, nor does it excuse anybody's behavior for committing acts of violence. But when you look at the trajectory from me as a child, I was almost murdered by my stepfather at the age of 8. I've seen violence in my community. I watched my mother get raped. I've watched all kinds of violence around me constantly as a child. And that really changed my brain chemistry. It made me hyper aggressive, angry, violent eventually. And that, again, it doesn't excuse it, but when you really look back in time and trace back the steps, violence doesn't just happen in a bubble. Right. You can trace back where the catalyst was and how it's learned behavior. So that's something we really got to work on and help people with.
Absolutely. You know, it's the concept of discovering the why behind the what, right? We see the what is this behavior, but what is the why that's
What's
behind
driving
that?
the behavior? Where did it come from?
Exactly. And once we, you know, as a whole, all of us, once we can hone in on that, then it helps in terms of unraveling that conflicted life on the inside, where we're able to get to a place to where we're healed and whole. So, man, I love it. So, Aaron, tell us about the, you know, what is the Youth Justice Fund? What do you guys do on a day-to-day basis in terms of helping the juveniles, former juveniles, in and around now? What's it look like in your day?
Yeah, it's an interesting, take for me, because I come from academia. So like a lot of my work for years has been, as a professor, doing research, teaching classes, and really empowering a lot of college students to like become involved in criminal justice reform. To shift from that to more, this nonprofit status where I'm a manager has been a challenge in all honesty. But I think I've really picked up the reins of the horse, and I'm running well with the ball right now. Even with the COVID-19 lockdown, which, like we were just talking offline, like has limited funding streams for a lot of nonprofits, and that's been really difficult to kind of find ways to get money to support our programs. But what we do in a nutshell, Nate, is basically we provide direct services for these youth. And like, for example, the number one thing people need when they come home is housing. As a convicted felon, nobody can get housing. There's millions of discriminatory practices. There's thousands of collateral consequences that keep us from getting, access to quality housing or housing in general. Employment is another one. Access to education, even higher education, sometimes is very discriminatory by having you check a box and say, well, depending on what you did or our mood today, maybe we'll let you in, maybe we won't. And then just the social acclimatation process. So that's where our trauma-informed services come into play. When we picked up people at the gates of the prison, and brought them home day one, take them out to eat, and having them connect with someone like myself or one of my colleagues that just got hired on, Mario Bueno, the former juvenile lifer, for them to talk and have this kind of moment with us where they realize that they're not alone, that there's someone else at this agency that has gone through the same things as them. I've been home 13 years. I think Mario's been home either 6 or 7. So we've already walked that walk in prison and then also coming home and become successful. So we help them go to Department of Human Services, get their identification, get them, signed up for a temporary job pool, find them housing, and we pay for a lot of these services as well. So I think we're a unique nonprofit where we actually throw out money, but also provide these services too. We get everybody, but it's not a handout, it's a hand up. We want people to really get in the direction where we're not just giving them fish, we want to teach them how to fish. Where can they get resources? How can they really empower themselves and do better? Another thing that YGF has recently done, we've partnered with the State Appellate Defender's Office, commonly known as SATO. So SATO does a lot of these resentencing hearings for juvenile lifers, and we've been doing these Wednesday wellness meetings every 2 weeks. Rick was actually leading one of the discussions last week where we were talking about post-traumatic stress disorder and how that's connected to our prison experience. And we have people on a Zoom meeting just like this talk about their experiences. And Rick and I, who've been home for a little bit more, we're kind of like empowering others that are first home and struggling and saying, even though it's tough in the beginning, you're going to get over this. When you went to a new prison for the first time, and get transferred, it's a whole new environment. You got to get to learn that, connect with people, network, build yourself and your reputation and work ethic. It's no different than the penitentiary. So I think a lot of those soft skills are transferable out here, but a lot of men and women don't really realize that. One other last plug. This Sunday, we're having another trauma-informed event in the east side of Detroit, this mental health art therapy session in which we're going to this old foundry in Detroit where we're working with formerly incarcerated youth and some clinicians that are art therapists. We're actually going to make some clay sculptures while talking about some of the traumatic events in our childhood and in the penitentiary. And then we're going to cast these in sand molds and take scrap metal that's been found in blighted areas around the city of Detroit and pour that into this cast to where we're actually going to have a metal sculpture that's representative of our trauma, which I think is a really badass way to kind of deal with the trauma that we've gone through in life. We're actually the representative of that with blighted materials that have just been, sitting around, areas of Detroit. So we have that this Sunday. That's on Facebook too. If anybody wants to peep that out, they're welcome to come out as well.
Yeah, that's 555 Art Center, right? You got Carl and Jay, two great guys. Did some work with them, yes. Both in the nonprofit and for-profit worlds. Carl and I worked on a project where Carl built out the census offices downtown Detroit when the census came here, and he subcontracted me to paint. So yeah, we have some connections with them.
That's awesome.
Really great program.
Guys, Rick, they're really good people. Jay's one of the ones that actually leads the workshop. So Jay's also formerly incarcerated. He's a badass artist. If you see some of the stuff he does, it's really cool, creepy cool too. Because he lets out a lot of the stuff that he had issues with when, his younger days. So, and he's a, United States veteran as well. So that's a whole other area that we don't often talk about too, is how, so many of our veterans that come home from service, are not getting the things that they need. And with PTSD and all the bullshit the government pushes them through and don't give them shit. It really, it just, I don't know. I'm going to go on a tangent about this, but like, we need to do better. And these people get incarcerated, and then we blame them because the government trained them to become killers and lock them into this mindset. It's the same with prison, even though going to prison, I wouldn't call that the same as like, serving your country, but like there's both trauma elements there in each of those. So we got to deal with that when people come home, whether it's from prison or wartime.
Yeah, it's true. So I heard this, tell me if this is true, that even though in the state of Michigan, the juvenile lifer law has changed, they're not letting everyone out. Is that true? Or is there a process that's holding people up?
Yeah.
How come they're not all home yet?
Well, so that is true. So we've got, I think, a little more than half of them home right now. So the U.S. Supreme Court said this, Nate, that roughly less than 1% of the people would be categorized as irredeemable or someone that's a danger to society. So the courts have said and issued this to all states, and this becomes retroactive now because of the Montgomery case, where roughly 99% of these juveniles should be resentenced to a term of years and be given an opportunity to come home. So that life should be really taken off the table without parole. What's happened, though, is a lot of states have pushed back. When we had Bill Schuette as our attorney general under the Snyder administration, he was a big opponent of these resentencing hearings, and a lot of other prosecutors they're kind of just holding up the process. That's what's going on. So as a policy move, for those of you in CJ circles, that's something you need to talk about as we have this November election for prosecutor races. Who's really going to have a mindset about giving some of these juveniles another chance? I think a lot of them have done big time, and they deserve an opportunity to be productive members of society if they're safe and we have a good plan for them.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, a couple interesting points. Number one, I want to re-highlight what you said when you said this population, juvenile lifers, recidivate less than 1%.
Yeah.
They have the least amount of recidivism through any population throughout prison, right?
That's correct.
And I think what I found astounding when I did some research on this is that Michigan was second in the country to sentence children, juveniles, to life without the possibility of parole, without the possibility. We were second only to Philadelphia, ironically, the city of brotherly love. So I think, though, like what you said, when you look at where most of these cases originate from, you're looking at the Tri-County area as far as Wayne, Macomb, Oakland, right?
Yeah.
Probably the most come out of Wayne. What folks should know is, as you raised up, Aaron, is I've seen something, I believe, yesterday on this, where it's about 40 or 44% of the time, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, which is ran by Kim Worthy, for example, thinks that those juveniles should be sentenced back to.
Yeah. And I don't agree with Kim Worthy. Kim Worthy's
so when you
fucked
look
up
at
a lot of
a 1% recidivism number, Yeah, you got 1% recidivism number, which means about 99% of them should be released, right? You're going to have that 1% or less of incorrigibles, right?
Yeah.
So why aren't prosecutors' office across the state and across the country, for that matter, taking these facts, right? This is research. This isn't something we guessed and say, "Oh, this sounds like a good number." We'll say less than 1%. No, This is rooted in research. This is rooted in, and it doesn't matter what side you come from, right, left, down the middle. It doesn't matter. Numbers are numbers, right? And there's nothing out there research-wise that's refuting these numbers. So again, you have to ask yourself, why are prosecutors so set against allowing children a second chance at life? I mean, you and I and Nate, I'm sure all of us on this, we all know juvenile lifers. They are some of the kindest, most considerate, humble, grateful folks I've ever met. And all they want a chance at is to live life just like any one of us. You know, so yeah, you're right.
I'm with you, bro.
Like I can consider too for some future episode.
Okay, so here's a question. So here we have a juvenile who's committed a murder. They gave him life without parole. He's in.
Yeah.
You're going to have half the people in the state of Michigan are going to say, "Oh, if they do the crime, do the time." And then there's those of us who are advocating for them to come home. What is a fair and balanced in a situation like that? What's a fair and balanced approach? Because obviously, if we break the public trust, there has to be some form of accountability, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What's the fair and balanced thing in a situation like this, Aaron?
I think what's fair and balanced, and I'll expand on what I said before, like, you know, I don't think we should just let out anybody. You know, we need to be, you know, very convinced that they're not a, you know, public safety threat. But like Rick said too, and the evidence is kind of irrefutable at this point, less than 1% are going to recidivate. That's science. Yeah. And that's not, you know, anecdotally, I've worked with thousands of people that are juvenile lifers across the U.S. I almost became a juvenile lifer in all honesty. Like, it's just, what we got to look at is that I think what people don't know is that they always hear the bad parts of the story, Nate. They just hear, you know, the horrific case, the murder, and then I'm saying murder's okay at all. But when you really, like my case, for example, with shootout with the police, like I just mentioned, if you go back in time and see where these children came from and what led up to that point, that helps to mitigate that. It doesn't forgive it. It doesn't like give them no accountability. That's one piece. But then on top of that, while these young people are in the prison system, if anybody that's spent a long time knows, the lifers are the ones that set the culture and the climate of an institution. Okay. And a lot of these times, these are juvenile lifers. So juvenile lifers, when I was incarcerated, helped to teach me how to read, how to write policy briefs. They taught me about the law. They're the ones that got me hungry for education while I was incarcerated and empowered me to become an engaged citizen when I came home. These are people that became mentors to me when, you know, there's these young kids running the yard doing stupid shit, stabbing people and doing their thing, you know, crazy kids. It was these juvenile lifers that had evolved decades later inside, and they've self-taught themselves. They may have taught college course, whatever it may be. I think that's the piece that the public is missing. What these people have done for themselves inside to transform and how they've transformed the lives of others. So to me, those are extra mitigating factors and then the final layer is, are they safe to come home if they've proven themselves? Then we should give them an opportunity. I think there's very few people that I've met over the years out of thousands that I would say are irredeemable. And when I'm talking about irredeemable, I'm talking about someone that even if they were a teenager where they kill someone and they cut them up into pieces, okay? Where they do something so just outside of the norm that, you know, maybe there's something wrong mentally. There's a mental illness deeper here instead of something where someone gets into a shootout on the east side of Detroit, bad drug deal gone wrong, or someone like myself, 18-year-old kid, just for whatever reason, because the way I grew up, I pull a gun on a police officer and start shooting. You know, and I could have killed that cop. No different than some of these other people that did take someone's life, and yet I'm accepted. And I also think another layer we didn't talk about is systemic racism. African Americans, Latinos, Hispanics, Arab Americans, you name it, they're disparately impacted in the system. And that's not to say that poor white folks don't get screwed as well, but like when we look at the system and how it's designed, it's meant to oppress people and predominantly people of color. So that's
Well,
why
just
a lot
imagine.
of people in Wayne County ain't coming home.
Imagine, Aaron, if, there are some people, especially in today's climate, where if you'd have committed that crime that you committed today, they would be promoting you getting life, right? Like people would be like, he deserved, right? And so I think that you're a great example of somebody that committed, by your own admission, a violent crime, shot at a police officer. But look at what you've done since, right? You're a professor at the University of Michigan, one of the most prestigious universities in the country. You've been all over the country speaking on these issues as a consultant. You've helped all these folks. But by all rights, some people would say you should have never got out. Some people would say me as a 7-time felon never should have got out. Some people would look at Nate and say, no, he shouldn't have got out. He did a violent crime. He had a weapon. You guys. So I think what folks need to understand is I say all that to say is nobody wants to be judged by their one words action. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly, Rick, as much as I love you and myself too, like we're just normal dudes.
Absolutely.
But what's different between me and you, I think, compared to other people, is that I think
I'm more handsome.
We had a good family structure and people to look out for us when we come home. That's what really, I think, gave us that stepping stone to really prove ourselves to become successful and help others. But so many people, when they come home to impoverished conditions or right back to the projects where they grew up, they have no family support, other families, not employed, they have no resources. Of course they're going to fail. It's fucking designed for them to fail. I mean, that's
I think
it's purposeful. It's made to control, isolate, and oppress certain people. Let's be real right now. It's not a broken system. It's actually doing exactly what it was intended to do. It's very well oiled, probably the best business system in the United States history. It's not a good system, but it's doing what it's supposed to.
Right. Absolutely. But you're right, though. The difference between the first 2 times I came home from prison, number one, the biggest difference was my mindset. This last time I said I'd never go back, right? I took steps inside to better myself, to do things to ensure that I didn't go back, right? And I think that translated to my family. I think that, of course, they had a certain amount of apprehension, regardless of the accomplishments that I had while I was incarcerated. Especially with my children, because I had went back before. People are waiting for the other shoe to drop, right?
Yeah.
But this time they understood that I was changed, and so there was more help there, right? My family
and they wanted to invest
really wanted to see me succeed, and they invested in me in however they could, in some of the best ways. My sister, when I came home, had a friend that was retired going to all these Salvation Armies and buying me clothes, right? They were used clothes, but they were nice, right? That's what could be done. My brother gave me 1 year to live at his house for free. I had to feed myself. That was it, right? I mean, those were all huge factors in me being able to go to school, me being able to start this nonprofit and fellowship with other people like me. It was the support. So I just want to applaud the efforts of what you're doing with Youth Justice Fund, what Nate's doing out there with Fresh Coast, because you guys are direct service providers, and so Safe and Just is also obviously happy to partner with you guys and help out any way we can. We're a policy organization, which is policy, So yeah, we're all doing our part, but I just, want to thank you guys, because it's the support that you give these folks that don't have family members, that might not believe in them yet, or don't have family, period. Y'all are their family. And so I think that needs to be lifted up, because we all get connected in that way. And I know this is so much more than a job for all of us, right? So again, I just want to applaud you and Nate for the service that you provide to our community, to our brothers and sisters coming home. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rick. And because we close up here, I think the most important piece of this is that we got to humanize individuals. We can't just take someone as a snapshot of what they did, decades ago or even years ago. Everybody makes mistakes. And in all honesty, people often ask me, Aaron, if you could go back in time and change some of the stuff you did, would you? And what would you tell I wouldn't tell my younger self anything, because I wouldn't be the man I am today if I didn't struggle and go through some of this crazy stuff. I feel bad for the stuff I did, but I wouldn't take it back, because it's taught me so much, and I've become so knowledgeable about these spheres of justice reform and all these things because I've lived it. It's a part of my soul. I think you and Nate both if we weren't so passionate and didn't experience this ourselves, we've got to share that passion with others so we can humanize those of us that have been justice impacted, I think, as a whole.
Nate,
Oh, great.
go ahead. You want to close? I got one announcement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Webinar coming up. Check Safe and Just website. We have a webinar coming up where the business community is going to talk about these reforms and why they're on board. And we're going to be looking to have some more webinars and involving the business community, both formerly incarcerated as well as, everyday folks out there, and the benefit that our community and our population serves those businesses, right? So that's coming up on Safe and Just. We have a lot of great things. Sign up for the newsletter. Always informative, let you know what's going on. We have a second package of bills getting ready to drop from the governor's task force, looking to clear a way for folks and their license, just really good work. So yeah, that's huge. Also want to give one last shout out, as you mentioned earlier, to Sato, another one of our partners. Really appreciate the work of Allison, Jose, Mari, all of them there, getting those folks home, like you said, leading the way on these resentencings. We couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. We just champion what you're doing down there, Aaron, and love the work. And you already know anything that we could do to help. We'd love to help out, participate, whatever. So we really appreciate you, appreciate the work you're doing, and continue to make it happen and change the world. You're impacting so many people's lives. And, it's one of these things, individuals come home and they feel blessed when there's those of us who have this this compelling pull to help clean up what we help mess up and help come back and guide the way, right? So we have a responsibility of letting people know, look, we found the way out. Come on, let's go. So we champion your effort. Love it, man. Appreciate you. And
one last comment, if I can, like one other thing other than just like humanizing us and looking out for people that have been in prison. See this cute little girl? She's sleeping back there right now. Can't really. So that's another reason I do this work. Like, we got to make things better for the next generation. I don't want my kid ever to go through the shit that I went through as a child. Yeah. And I'll be damned if she ever gets incarcerated. But like very often, incarceration is a cycle. It's a family cycle. So when you come from certain communities and certain families and you don't have a lot of access to resources, that happens. My mother was locked up, my uncle, my stepdad, my real father. We got to break that cycle for the next generation. We got to look out for these kids. So I'll close with that. And I appreciate you, Rick. I appreciate you, Nate. You guys are both awesome. And it's been great talking to you both.
Good stuff.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck on your trip. Let's find some campsites. Be safe.
I will. Yeah. Holler at me later, bro, once I get closer up there. We're up close by Saginaw now, I think. So we're
Sterling's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from there. So I'll get you that info. Okay, check out those sites.
Appreciate it.
Cool. Hey, Facebook, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week, I believe, with Asia Johnson and the Bail Project next week. So tune in next week, Thursday, 10 a.m. for Criminal Justice Cafe. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you. Peace out.